So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day our producer Louis had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithm really aren't that happy if a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track Xtra. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday evening at 6:30, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for On the Track Extra. My name's John Dan. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and that means I am the head ringmaster of this peculiar circus. And every Saturday afternoon at 3 for about half an hour, and every Wednesday evening at 6:30 for about half that, we bring you a miscellany of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. You don't know what surreality is? Well, I think you need to ask Miss Isabel.
Surreality is when you wash your hair and it comes out like this.
Oh, I think it looks very nice, Auntie. It's just like my friend Jemima.
Archie doesn't like the postman. In fact, he doesn't like anybody with a reflective jacket, which has always made me wonder whether somebody with a reflective jacket kicked him or something when he was a little puppy. But all of this is a great pity, because it means you have to keep Archie out of the way when the postman comes. And the postman quite often comes to this house and brings me very interesting things. For example, this morning he brought me this book. It's a new book about the Mongolian deathworm, which for all sorts of reasons has a picture of a three-spined stickleback on its cover. I've always been fond of these little fish. They're particularly pugnacious, and they have a complicated breeding cycle wherein the male builds a nest and then keeps guard over it, fighting off all other males and intruders of other species. I have every intention, assuming that we manage to stay in this house, and if we don't, wherever I end up, I'm going to try and buy some three-spined sticklebacks and see if I can breed them in captivity, just because I can. And if I do, I will be filming them and sharing the results with you here on the track, because they really are magnificent little fish. The book came along with a letter. Dear John, almost 30 years ago I read about the Mongolian deathworm in your Fortean Times column. Whilst I didn't follow it up on it as a teenager, the creature established itself in my mind and has been my little pal ever since. A couple of years ago I had some ideas for poems about the Mongolian deathworm and looked for more information. I was encouraged to read in the 2008 yearbook and in online articles about how the CFZ have continued to search for the truths beyond the myths. I still have plenty of catching up to do, but I've been fascinated by the different approaches and insights. The enclosed poems rely more on the myths than on the recent advances in plausibility and identity theories, but I hope you enjoy them nonetheless. The poetry micro-pamphlet will be sent out to the subscribers of the small poetry press who accepted it, and at some point in 2024 it will be a free PDF download on their website. I also have copies for sale and occasionally read some of the poems at local open mics. So, hopefully the Mongolian deathworm will make a few new friends. With very best wishes, Liz. And this is from Liz Kendall in Cobham in Surrey.
Hey John.
Yes, Isabel?
What's this about the Mongolian deathworm?
Well, Isabel, it's a long and slightly complicated story.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin.
Oh, I'll get comfortable.
Well, they always say that people remember where they were when they heard that Kennedy had been shot. Well, I can tell you, I was 4 years old and I have no memory whatsoever. But what I do remember is exactly where I was the first time I heard about the Mongolian deathworm. Carl Schuker phoned me up one morning about 30 years ago and said, "Have a look at this, there's a story in the Daily Mail." And it was about a Czech explorer called Ivan Macaulay, who had just published a book about his adventures in the Gobi Desert. He wrote that there is a Mongolian legend which described the creature as travelling underground, creating waves of sand on the surface which allow it to be detected, and it is said that it can kill at a distance, either by spraying a venom at its prey or by means of an electric discharge. It primarily lives in burrows underground, only rarely coming to the surface. Well, surprisingly, Carl and I had never heard of it, so we did a bit more digging, and the story first came to the Western attention back in 1926, when explorer Roy Chapman Andrews wrote a book called On the Trail of Ancient Man. He had gathered many second-hand tales of the monster, and he had heard them all at a gathering of Mongolian officials, but wrote, none of those present had ever seen the creature, but they all firmly believed in its existence and described it minutely. In On the Trail of Ancient Man, Andrews cites Mongolian Prime Minister Damdin Bazar, who in 1922 described the worm as being shaped like a sausage about 2 feet long, has no head or leg, and it is so poisonous that to merely touch it means instant death. It lives in the most desolate parts of the Gobi Desert. And in 1932 he published this information again in his book The New Conquest of Central Asia, adding, "It is reported to live in the most arid, sandy regions of the western Gobi." Andrews, however, did not believe in the creature's existence. So fast forward now to 2005, when Richard Freeman led a CFZ expedition of, if my memory serves me well, 5 people to Mongolia to look for the deathworm himself. The first thing that he found out was that it appears that the more fantastic attributes which have been landed upon the creature are just that, they are fantasy. There is no electric shock, there is no spitting venom. In fact, there's probably no venom. But he interviewed a number of people who had seen the creature, and he came up with the conclusion that it is one of 2 creatures. It's either a new colour variant or new species of sandboa, like this one, which is a sandboa species. It's quite well known from Mongolia. Or it's an unknown species of amphispanian, or worm lizard, which are strange creatures which are neither lizards or worms or snakes, but they're something between. They're ophidian, they're between snakes and lizards. However, when I was putting this episode together, I found out that there's another school of thought, that they're very primitive and specialised lizards whose closest relations are probably the geckos. So, go with whichever explanation you like. But they're fascinating little creatures which are found in many parts of the world. There's even one found in Europe, But he reckons that the Mongolian deathworm, or Alagoi korkoi as the natives call it, which is actually Mongolian for intestine worm because it apparently looks like a length of cow's intestine, is actually an unknown species of these singular little creatures. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to the beginning. And here is one of the poems that Liz wrote in this lovely little booklet. It's called The Deathworm Reflects on Its Name. Like Dolly Parton, Genghis Khan was a true literature fan. He too saw that to read and write was even better than to fight. There's always slack days in a war, and reader, that's what books are for. While Dolly gives her library to children out of love for free, with Genghis Khan you had to pay in blood, devotion come what may. But if your skin did not get ripped, the Uyghur Mongolian script would help you translate what was said by Mongols who are not yet dead. So Alagoi korkoi is my name, in lands where Genghis raised his game, and changed his name from Temujin, intestine worm, that's what mine means. It's accurate, I grant that's so, but am I flattered? Reader, no. And I really, really like that. Call me old-fashioned, but I like poetry that rhymes, and I thought that was utterly gorgeous. Thank you very much, Liz. That's made me a very happy old fool today. Now, as I was putting this episode together with Miss Isabel and the dog, I had a message from another old friend of mine, Timothy Wayne Williams, who's a very, very cool artist. And he has a limited edition fine art calendar for 2024, all about cryptids, and you can get it at this link below. Have a look at it. Some of these pictures are utterly gorgeous, and I'm a real fan of his work, and I've been trying to work out a way that I can have him on the show for months and months because I really like his paintings. So guys, go out, buy it. Also, try contacting Liz, who apparently this book is available for sale from her. So I will put a link to her again at the bottom of the show and in the show notes, so you can all go out, buy her lovely little book, buy Timothy's lovely calendar, and tell them both that John Dan sent you. Now, I'm going to be back on Wednesday, and what have we got on the show on Wednesday? Well, we have a visit to Denmark, where we meet up with two of the stalwart founders of a group called Hidden Mark, Hid Denmark. I love puns, and my old mate Simon, who you see in the live chat quite regularly, is one of the guys not only who runs this Hidden Mark, but also came up with the pun in the first place. So he's on the show on Saturday together with another visit from Tom the World Poet, and we look at some strange whales and dolphins from the Cetacean Nation. So I'm going to be here on Saturday. I'm also going to be here the Wednesday after, when we're going to be reviewing a controversial book by the Right Reverend Sean Manchester, who everybody either seems to love or hate, and I'm not going to tell you which side of the fence I come on, but I'm going to sit back and enjoy watching the sparks fly. So, if I'm there doing live chat and lecturing and doing all the other stuff I do, and you're there, Mr. McCrinnan, if you're there watching the show, then I'll be seeing you.